Welcome to my diary, beloved. I'm Tatami, and today we are going to talk about divide and conquer propaganda, us versus them propaganda. And this is something that's been very pervasive in the United States, at least, for pretty much its entire existence. We've done it over race, we've done it over religion, we've done it over language, over classes, we've done it over lifestyle, we've done it over, environmentalism. We love us some good us versus them propaganda and theatrics, don't we? But we're at a really crucial point in human history where things need to be addressed, and there needs to be a way for us to come together and for it to be just a human issue, right? Not for it to just be a partisan issue wherein you're just so entrenched on a side that you can't listen or even be able to come together over really huge issues like climate change or the nuclear arms race that's occurring and been occurring for a couple years now, basically since Trump got in charge of the nuclear codes. So I found this really amazing article by someone named Caitlin Johnstone, who I follow on Twitter, and she put this up on Substack. I'm going to put the link down below if you would like to read it. But she really got into this, and I appreciated it because I thought it was something that we really needed to hear. She begins. Liberal pundit Keith Olbermann shared a video the other day where he ranted about people who don't want to take the COVID vaccine with such emotional vitriol that spittle flew from his mouth and drool poured down his chin. I found it hard to watch, partly because it's always uncomfortable to see someone come apart like that, and partly because it made me realize I've probably spent the last few years making fun of a media personality who has some actual diagnosable psychological disorders. Rather than lay out what he thinks are the best arguments for taking the vaccine, as most of his peers have been doing, Olbermann instead spouts vituperations about what cowards and snowflakes unvaccinated people are. They're afraid, Olbermann screams over and over again, as though being afraid of something makes you some sort of monster. As though we're not all afraid of something, whether it be the vaccine, or the virus, or being alone, or the fact that thawing Arctic permafrost is pouring methane into the atmosphere. This commonality should draw us closer together, but here it's being used for partisan us versus them theatrics, which drives us further apart. Us versus them frameworks are used constantly to manipulate people into espousing various narratives, and narrative manipulation is the underlying source of all of humanity's problems. Today's world is dominated by a unipolar power structure loosely centralized around the US government. It is comprised of many nations, which are ostensibly independent, but since they move in near complete alignment with each other on all international issues of major importance, this power structure can effectively be called an empire. This empire sets the economic, environmental, and military policies which are causing all of the ecocide, war, and nuclear brinkmanship we see driving humanity towards its destruction today. The empire's greatest weapon is not its military, but its propaganda machine. There's simply never been anything like the global narrative control provided by the Western news media, Silicon Valley, and Hollywood. The military fights wars. The propaganda machine wins them long before they even start. When you use the military to eliminate opposition, everyone knows it happened. When you use propaganda to eliminate opposition, people aren't even aware you did it. They think it was their own idea to suddenly become super concerned about Saddam or Putin or Maduro or whomever, or to go along with this or that power-serving agenda. Beyond the hard, concrete realities of war and militarism, there's a whole other war being fought on a far greater scale and of far greater consequences, and most people don't even know it's happening. The mass-scale psychological manipulation of the entire human species. Okay, so before we go on, I do want to say I think that this is just a really great moment for introspection, to think about the times where we think that we've, come up with this thing or been really interested in a sort of activism, but in reality, it's kind of just been the media pulling us along. And I think a lot of leftists really do see that for what it is and call a spade on that for what it is. But we do see a lot of center leftists still often fall for propaganda. And sometimes it just slips through. People don't even notice they're doing it. And sometimes people are presenting themselves as, independent, but they're just repeating what's on CNN, MSNBC. It's kind of why I've started to become a little more cynical about a lot of like leftist commentary channels, because some of them don't label themselves as commentary and label themselves as the news, when in reality they don't have any journalists. They're not sending anybody to go get this information themselves. They don't have a camera on the scene of anywhere. And so that is just commentary. They are just taking information that the main propaganda machine has churned out. And sometimes they are looking at it through a critical eye, but a lot of the time they're just repeating it and reading an article the same way I'm just reading this lady's really well thought out and well said opinion. This is why human behavior looks so irrational when taken together. Why are we fighting all these wars, engaging in nuclear brinkmanship, and destroying the biosphere when we know intellectually these are bad things? It's not because humans are inherently destructive. It's because a few destructive humans manipulate the rest of us into doing destructive things using propaganda. I thought that was just really astute, because nothing really pisses me off more than people who try to start this whole all humans are evil, all humans are just greedy, all humans are lazy type of bullshit. And it just makes it sound like we've had this whole history of like the first guy who made fire was like, only if you pay me to find out. And the first person who planted a seed was like, I'm not telling anyone how it happened. I think that it just negates so much of human history that's been communal, sharing, kind, loving, uplifting, fighting for all of our survival. And it really just dismisses all of that. And it also erases huge portions of history, because it makes you think that how we live now, which is not how we've lived, like humans didn't always live like this, but it makes it seem like we've lived like this for much longer than we have, which is just incorrect. A lucid and well-informed examination of the world's problems will keep bringing you back to this one fundamental issue: that Earth's inhabitants are being psychologically manipulated at mass scale into organizing themselves in ways that serve the powerful instead of the people. Most propaganda is based on us versus them framing. Support the oligarch-controlled Democrat Party because Republicans are bad. Support the oligarch-controlled Republican Party because Democrats are bad. Those evil Muslims, Russians, Chinese, they want to hurt us. That evil dictator over there is doing things which we good freedom-loving people cannot allow. A tremendous amount of energy goes into feeding and into these us and them frameworks to keep the propaganda engine running efficiently. Manipulative narcissists, cult leaders, and propagandists all do this, and they do it because it's effective. A video titled "The Science Behind Us Versus Them" by Big Think does a good job of breaking down how deeply hardwired the human brain is to think in terms of an in-group who we like and an out-group who we don't like, citing numerous experiments which have shown this to be true around the world. What becomes clear when you look closely is it is virtually inevitable that we divide the world into us's and them's and don't like them's very much and don't treat them well, explains neuroendocrinology researcher Robert Sapolsky. But we are incredibly easily manipulated as to who counts as an us and who counts as a them. We could be manipulated by all sorts of ideologues out there as to deciding that people who seem just like us really aren't. They're really so different that they count as a them. We turn the world into us's and them's, and we don't like the them's very much and are often really awful to them. And the us's, we exaggerate how wonderful, how generous, and how affiliative, and how just like siblings they are to us, says Sapolsky. Can you see how easy it would be for someone who understands this aspect of our psychology to exploit it, to seed propaganda in our minds? The phenomenon, commonly called spiritual enlightenment, consists of a shift in perception which causes the sense of separateness to fall away, making it clear on a deep experiential level that we are one, not just with all people, but with the entire universe. You still have your own ideas, disagreements, and preferences when it comes to politics and society, but the sense that anyone is some kind of other separate from you and yours falls away. So there just happens to be a potentiality within all of us that could solve all our problems if it were to somehow become unlocked at mass scale. Every species eventually arrives at a point where it must either unlock a potentiality within itself and adapt to a changing situation or go extinct. We're getting there. That's exactly where we're getting. It looks like we are arriving at this point currently, and that collective enlightenment is the potentiality we will need to unlock if we are to turn away from our trajectory towards gloom, or towards doom. I said gloom, doom. But I think this is so important because if you'll remember, one of the main reasons that I felt so compelled to stick with Howie Hawkins and Angela Walker of the Green Party for the presidential election of 2020 was because they were focused on things like this. The environment's so important. It's not just like, oh, we're all hippies, love other creatures, love all the species. It's like this on a purely selfish level. Even the most self-centered person should see how important it is to take care of the environment that we all survive on. This isn't something that's just like deeply personal to one person. This is something that impacts everybody. The nuclear war and arms race type of thing that we're going through, that terrifies me. And the fact that no one else really talked about it was just mind-boggling to me. It was just ignoring it completely. And this is what we're talking about when we're talking about things that will make you go extinct, that are so much bigger than so many of these other things, that no matter what this other person believes, you want them to survive with this too. You want them on board for this too. We should all be hand in hand for things like this, or else we're literally asking for our extinction as a species. And I think that would just do such a disservice to so many wonderful humans who have lived on this planet and done right by other humans, and those to come and those who are here right now. All of it deserves better. You know what I'm saying? I'm just not one of those people who's like, well, if we all die, we die. No. I cherish too many things that humans have done for me to just be like, let's all just give up and give the planet back to the moss. Not that type of activist. And that will either happen or it won't. I personally don't think it's some random aberration that this potentiality, which sages have been writing about for millennia, just so happens to be exactly what we need at this particular juncture with this particular collective psychological dilemma. But if I'm wrong and humanity does go the way of the dinosaur, it would be a damn shame if we didn't at least hold hands on our way down. Yeah, like I said, I'm not very familiar with Caitlin Johnstone. I don't know when I started following her, and I don't know. I just clicked on this article, and it really pulled at me because it reminded me of where we need to be going, especially as leftists, what we should be fighting for. I noticed that a lot of, like I said in my video about, oh, everybody gets healthcare except the unvaccinated now it's not healthcare for all. We can get sucked into really foolish propaganda, really hateful. I mean, just think of the logic that it would take for you to decide to go from being healthcare for all to deciding certain people don't get healthcare because you're mad at them, or certain people don't get healthcare because you disagree with them, or, you know, there has to be stipulations and means testing of some sort. It's just wild that we can suddenly drop what should have been such a simple thing for us all to agree on. And with just a few like snarky tweets, some people got really sucked into that propaganda and let go of the hands of other people, started punching out and acting as though that's going to get us to where we need to be. It's not. It's really not. So I think this was such a wonderful reminder to not fall for the us versus them propaganda, and to instead try to like calibrate. Look at yourself. Look at what you're doing. Look at what you're consuming. And when you do consume things, it's not to say you can't ever, consume somebody who's, angry about something, passionate about something. I said many times, politics makes you passionate because it's your fucking life. It is your life. It is your home. It is your streets. It's the schools. It's everything that you have, the food structure. Everything is involved and intertwined with politics. So people are going to get passionate. People are going to yell. People are going to scream. But the fact is if we're not putting that through a filter and keeping our eyes on the goal of unity and survival and, on these especially bigger issues that's going to be impacting the planet, we're going to be able to be easily sucked into this type of stuff too. I can't even tell you. I made a list originally and it just got so long of leftist spaces that were advocating for certain people to not get healthcare, or advocating for certain people to be like left to the dogs and die. And there has to be more heat for the empire than for the peasants who are reacting under the empire. There has to be more heat for the system than the people failed by the system. And that's really what this propaganda does, is it turns our eyes away from the system that is doing this stuff and laser focuses us back onto the peasants, onto the people without power, onto the people who are using straws, and not on the people whose products are literally scattered across the entire globe, just disgustingly ruining all the types of environment we have. There's so much more heat for, people who eat fish than the fishing practices of these companies, which are ruining like 1,000-year-old coral structures on the bottom of the ocean floor. It's just, I just don't understand it. I don't understand having all that heat and vitriol, and you're going to come up here and you're going to spit in the faces of all these people and tell them all this stuff, but you don't have that same energy for the people in charge. Have that energy for the people in charge. If it was one or two people, or a group of people here or there, I'd be like, yeah, let's talk about them. But it's not one or two people. There's a whole system in play here, and not only is our system doing this, but other systems are following suit, partially because we're kind of armed to the teeth, and so a lot of people don't want to go against what we say. A lot of people don't want to go against what we do, but the fact remains that there is a level of power here that is causing others. It's a ripple effect of us doing stuff and other people kind of being bullied into doing it too. Other nations, or nations who want a cut of this pie, are also doing it for their own personal gain, and it's just causing this ripple effect of destruction, of poverty, and not only that, but it's expanding to things that are going to absolutely impact the entirety of us. Things such as nuclear war, things such as ecocide. It's so serious. And I just want us to remember us versus them propaganda, and to start noticing it when it keeps popping up in our faces. Thank you so much for watching. May your ancestors and spirit guides be with you at every crossroads, and I will see you next time.